Alright, so let's go ahead and do lesson 47, circumference and pi. And pi is a ratio. And we're going to talk about ratios for a second before I jump into circumference and pi. I actually am excited about this lesson. Alright, so here's a ratio problem. Before we get into circumference and pi, I want to show you this. Now, what is the average miles per hour that this car has is traveling at? So in order to find that out, it's not really an average problem since we have two different units or labels there. We're really comparing miles to hours. Okay? Since miles comes first, it goes on top of the fraction, and hours comes second, so it goes on bottom. So the number that represents miles is 500, so that goes on top. Hours, 8. So what's the average speed of this car? You're going to have to take 500 divided by 8. 8 will go into 550 about 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48. Subtract 2, bring down your 0. 8 will go into 20 about 2 times. 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract, we're going to get 4. So 4 eighths. If you reduce that, it's going to be 62 1/2 miles per every hour. Alright, so that's pretty fast. This car is making good time. They definitely don't have kids because after 8 hours, yeah, kids, we need to stop and get some food and water and take a bathroom break. So this must just be a dad in a hurry, driving across America, getting to where he needs to get fast in 8 hours. Alright, so this is a ratio problem. Let's look at a different type of ratio, and that is circumference and pi. Pi is also a ratio, and we get pi the same way we got this problem, only we're comparing, instead of miles to hours, you're comparing circumference to diameter. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, here's the circle. This circle has a circumference, and you guys remember Circumference. He's a nice gentleman. Circumference. Alright, and the circumference is 15.7 centimeters. If you were to take a string and wrap it around here and measure that string, it would be 15.7 centimeters. The diameter, that means distance across a circle, is 5 centimeters. So what we're going to do is we're going to take what is the circumference to the diameter. Notice this is a ratio because we're comparing circumference to diameter. Alright? And just like the miles per hour problem, this is not an average because it's a relationship between two separate units of measurement, or two separate things. So we're going to take our circumference, which is 15.7, and that's going to be over the diameter of 5. Now this is an improper fraction, so we're going to do top divided by bottom, which would be 15.7 divided by 5. Okay? And how many times will 5 go into 15? 3. 3 times 5 is 15. Subtract 0, and you guys know how to divide decimals by whole numbers. So this is a review from a lesson. So 0 is less than 5, so we're going to bring 7 down. 5 will go into 7 how many times? 1 time. 1 times 5 is 5. Subtract 7 minus 5 is 2. Okay, so I can add a 0 right next to the 7. Okay, I can add as many zeros as I want. Remember this lesson where you can enlarge a decimal by adding as many zeros as you want. So I'm going to expand my division symbol there. Alright, so then I'm going to bring down another 0. 5 will go into 20 about 4 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Subtract 0. Now I'm going to bring the decimal straight up. So the ratio of circumference to diameter is 3.14. Some of you may be already noticing that, hey, Ms. Razan, 3.14 is the number for pi. And pi is a Greek symbol that represents this ratio, this number, 3.14. Now, I did 15.7 divided by 5. Let's do a couple other circles, and we'll find the ratio of the circumference to diameter, and let's see if we get anything different than 3.14. So I'm going to write up here so we remember 3.14, because we're going to use that number a lot. Alright, I have another circle, and this circle, the circumference is 21.98 centimeters. The diameter is 7 centimeters. So, what goes on top? Well, the number that's associated with circumference, which would be 21.98. And what is the diameter? The diameter is 7. Okay, now we have an improper fraction. You guys know how to do this. You're going to take 21.98 top divided by bottom, which is 7. 7 will go into 21 how many times? 3 times. 3 times 7 is 21. Subtract 0. Bring down the 9. How many times will 7 go into 9? 1 time. 1 times 7 is 7. Subtract 2. Bring down the 8. How many times will 7 go into 28? Exactly 4 times. 4 times 7 is 28. Okay? Usually there won't be a remainder if it's a pi, but I mean, I didn't measure the circle exact. I just kind of rounded to the nearest hundredth of an inch, which is close enough, at least for now. Alright, so then I'm going to move the decimal point straight up. You guys know how to divide decimal numbers by whole numbers. Oh, and what did we get again? We got pi, 3.14. Okay, so we're going to use this this number, pi, 3.14. Actually, it's about 3.14. And we're going to use it over and over again to calculate a lot of different things. So basically what we're saying is that the diameter is, actually the circumference is whatever the diameter is times 3.14. So if we want to calculate circumference, you're going to take the diameter and multiply that by 3.14, because in a circumference is whatever the diameter is times 3.14. So let's go ahead and find the circumference for this circle. We don't know what the circumference is. We do know the diameter though. You measure across there and it is 10 centimeters. Okay, so I'm going to take 10 times 3.14, and that's going to equal our circumference. And remember, if you multiply anything by 10, if you remember from the last lesson, you can just move the decimal one place to the right. So the circumference of this circle is going to be, if I move the decimal point one place to the right, it is going to be 31.4 centimeters. Alright, if I took a string, wrapped it around this circle, and measured that string, I would have about 31.4 centimeters as the distance around this circle. So let's do one more problem and then we'll do some homework. Alright, it's a good exercise to pause the video and try the problem on your own, and then come back and see if you got the right answer. So if you want to pause, go ahead and do that now. Pause. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this formula that we just kind of figured out on our own, and we're going to find out the circumference, or the distance around. Alright, so the diameter, we already know what the diameter is, so I'm going to write 8.5 directly below D. Then I'm going to multiply that by pi, which in this case we're using 3.14. Okay, and that is all going to be equal to our circumference. So if you need to do a little bit of work on the side, go ahead and do that. And we have 3.14 times 8.5. Remember, when you're multiplying decimals, you do not have to line up the points, okay? If we were adding these two together, you would have to line up the decimal points. But since multiplying, different ballgame, different rules. 5 times 4 is 20, carry your 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. 5 times 3 is 15. Cancel, placeholder 0. 8 times 4 is 32, so the 2 goes there. carry the 3. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 3 is 11. Carry the 1. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 1 is 25. Add these up, and we're going to have 7 plus 2 is 9, 5 plus 1 is 6, 6, 2. Now you have to remember decimal placement. In order to do decimal placement, you count how many, on the top of the problem, you count how many places the decimal has been moved to the left. So count with me, 1, 2, 3. So if the decimal has been moved a total of 3 places over to the left on top, then we're going to move it 3 places over here. 1, 2, 3. So our circumference is going to be, if you want to do the about sign, that's cool, about 26.69 centimeters. Okay, and that is our answer. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's do a couple homework problems and we will call it a day. Alrighty, let's do number 2 from your homework. A jet can travel 600 miles per hour. Pretty fast. The trip is 3,000 miles. I guess this is across an ocean here. How long would it take to fly across the ocean? It wants you to write an equation and solve. So we're going 600 miles per hour, and we're going to multiply that by h for hours. And so if we do 600 miles per hour for x amount of hours, then that should equal 3,000 miles. How do we solve this? Well, equation-wise, we'll draw a line down the center. What's opposite multiplying by 600? Dividing by 600. This is a division sign. So if I divide this side by 600, then I'm going to divide this side by 600. Okay, so h is going to equal, now this is also a fraction, so we can reduce it some. Cross out some zeros. It's really 30 divided by 6. If you take 30 divided by 6, it's going to be 5 hours. That is your answer. Alright, problem number 6. It says s equals 1/2. Find 4 times s. If you have a number next to a letter, it's implied that those two things are going to be multiplied together. Okay, so this is really 4 times s. And we know that s is 1/2, so we're going to substitute 1/2 in for s. So I'm going to put 1/2 directly below s because they're interchangeable. Alright, and I'm going to take 1/2 times the 4. Oh no, a whole number times a fraction. That's hard unless you know a trick. The trick is, put the whole number over 1. Now we can take 4 over 1 times 1/2. When we do that, you just multiply the numerators. 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. And then when you get an improper fraction, top divided by bottom, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So if I take those two and put them together, I know the answer is going to be 2. 2 is your answer for number 6. Alright, here's how you do number 11. The equation is separated by 2 sides. I'm going to let you look at it for just a second, and I'm not going to talk through this one, but there's how you do it. Opposite division is multiplication. Alrighty, let's go ahead and find the number right here. 4 times what number equals 20? I'm going to write it in a different color. You know that if you multiply 4 by 5, you're going to get 20. If you multiply the bottom by 5, then you're going to need to multiply the top by 5. And 3 times 5 is going to be 15. So 3/4 equals 15 20ths. Alright, so here's a ratio problem. Before we get into circumference and pi, I want to show you this. Now, what is the average miles per hour that this car has is traveling at? So, in order to find that out, it's not really an average problem since we have 2 different units, or labels there. We're really comparing miles to hours. Okay? Since miles comes first, it goes on top of the fraction, and hours comes second, so it goes on bottom. So, the number that represents miles is 500, so that goes on top. Hours, 8. So what's the average speed of this car? You're going to have to take 500 divided by 8. 8 will go into 550 about 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48. Subtract 2, bring down your 0. 8 will go into 20 about 2 times. 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract, we're going to get 4. So 4/8. If you reduce that, it's going to be 62 1/2 miles per every hour. Alright, so that's pretty fast. This car is making good time. They definitely don't have kids because after 8 hours, yeah, kids, we need to stop and get some food and water and take a bathroom break. So this must just be a dad in a hurry, driving across America, getting to where he needs to get fast in 8 hours. Alright, so this is a ratio problem. Let's look at a different type of ratio, and that is circumference and pi. Pi is also a ratio, and we get pi the same way we got this problem, only we're comparing, instead of miles to hours, you're comparing circumference to diameter. So let's go ahead and do